made millions of dollars selling drugs, providing a vehicle by which people could get things that were going to kill them, and people died. He also sought a couple of people to murder on his behalf because he thought his empire was threatened. What is your opinion about Trump pardoning this drug dealer, attempted murderer? You've talked about your devotion to the men and women in the FBI. I accept that. But as you know, President Trump used the power of the pardon to let people who are cop beaters out of jail. He also let a drug dealer out of jail. Many of the people who congratulated you and your parents on your extraordinary story. But what's so hard about just saying that Biden won the 2020 election? What's hard about that?
That President Biden was certified and sworn in, and he was the president. I don't know how else to say it.
Donald Trump has never acknowledged that he lost in 2020. And he invited people to come to the Capitol on January 6th to stop the steal. After that happened, police officers died. People were injured. It created enormous ongoing bitterness within the country. Do you believe that the 2020 election was stolen, as President Trump says it is?
My opinions on the 2020 election have been expressed in this hearing, and he's entitled to whatever opinions he wants.
You understand what I'm asking you. Can you say Joe Biden won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden was the president of the United States.
And you cannot say that Joe Biden won the election.
What I can say is the same for both of them, Senator. Both of their elections were certified, and they are both, one was and one now is president.
Okay.
This exchange runs about 7 minutes, and it is built around one recurring pattern. A senator asks a direct yes or no question about independence from the president, and the FBI director nominee answers with a formula instead of a fact. Issue 1. He cannot say the words Biden won. He can say Trump won, a man he didn't vote for, without hesitation. Issue 2. Asked whether he'd initiate prosecutions of Kamala Harris or investigate General Milley for treason, both things Trump has publicly called for. He won't rule it out and won't rule it in. Issue 3. He claims to oppose pardons for violent offenders, then refuses to say whether Trump was wrong to pardon a man who hired hitmen. Issue 4. Asked directly whether he could say no to a president demanding an unconstitutional action. He pivots to a talking point about being the first public defender to lead the FBI and never answers. Issue 5. When the senator raises the president naming Harris, Liz Cheney, and Adam Schiff as targets for prosecution, Patel calls weaponization in the eye of the beholder. As a journalist covering federal institutions for 7 years, the pattern here isn't refusal. It's substitution, a formula standing in for an answer. Every single time. Let's go through it.
Thank you very much. Just responding, you guys won. There was, if you want to call it a jury box, the American people elected you, and you're the majority party in the House and in the Senate. You've got President Trump was duly elected. But let me tell you, the source of my ongoing concern, which I regret, it sometimes does not seem to be a common concern. We had a catastrophe for our democracy on January 6th. And you're asserting that you won, and you did, and I acknowledge it. It troubles me that so many people have difficulty saying Biden won the election. And I listened to your response, Mr. Patel, and many of the people who congratulated you and your parents on your extraordinary story. I share that, so I want you to know that. But what's so hard about just saying that Biden won the 2020 election? What's hard about that?
Senator, as I've said before, that President Biden was certified and sworn in, and he was the president. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, the other way to say it is he won.
He was the president.
The other way to say it is he won. I can say Trump won. I didn't vote for him. He won. You know, Al Gore said Bush won when they were having that recount in Florida. And we have had a peaceful transfer of power here in very contested elections. And I'll just be very direct with you about why I think this is of consequence. When Donald Trump has never acknowledged that he lost in 2020. And he invited people to come to the Capitol on January 6th to stop the steal. And after that happened, police officers died. People were injured. It created enormous ongoing bitterness within the country. And that's your boss. Do you believe that the 2020 election was stolen, as President Trump says it is?
My opinions on the 2020 election have been expressed in this hearing, and he's entitled to whatever opinions he wants.
Do you agree with him that the election was stolen in 2020?
Senator, millions of Americans have expressed concern going back to multiple elections over election integrity.
You know, you're so skillful. You understand what I'm asking you. Can you say the words, Joe Biden won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden was the president of the United States.
You know, I'm going to stay on this. There's a difference. I can say the words, Donald Trump won. I don't like to say it, but I must say it. And you cannot say that Joe Biden won the election.
What I can say is the same for both of them, Senator. Both of their elections were certified, and they are both, one was and one now is president.
The senator opens by acknowledging the obvious. Trump won. Republicans won the House and Senate. The American people decided. But then she pivots to the thing that's been bothering her, that so many people close to Trump can't say plainly that Biden won in 2020. She asks Patel directly, more than once, what's so hard about saying Biden won the 2020 election? Patel's answer doesn't change, no matter how she phrases it. Biden was certified, he was sworn in, he was president. She tries a different angle. She can say Trump won in 2016 even though she didn't vote for him, because that's what a normal person does when someone wins an election. Patel still won't use a word. She raises why this matters. Trump has never acknowledged losing in 2020. He invited people to the Capitol to stop the steal, and officers died as a result. She asks Patel point blank whether he believes that the election was stolen. Patel still won't use the election was stolen. He says his opinions have already been expressed in the hearing, and that Trump is entitled to his own opinion. She asks again if he agrees with Trump that it was stolen. He talks about millions of Americans expressing concern over election integrity, not an answer to the question asked. By the end of this exchange, Patel has said Biden was president, and Biden was certified multiple times. He has not once said Biden won. The senator's framing is simple. That's not a slip, that's a choice.
I have some concerns about that, my colleagues on the Republican side. Whoever is the FBI director, and I suspect it will be Mr. Patel, has a boss. And he has strong points of view. He said Vice President Harris was a criminal and should be prosecuted. Is that a prosecution you would initiate?
There is no prosecution or that the FBI will ever initiate, because the FBI will only do investigations, and those will only be open where there's a factual and constitutional basis to do so.
Your boss has said that General Milley, who served us with great distinction, I happen to have great admiration for, should be tried for treason. Do you agree with that?
Senator, everybody's entitled to their opinion. The only thing that matters at the FBI is whether the law is followed.
The senator shifts from the election question to something more concrete. Patel's boss has already told the country what he wants. Trump has said Kamala Harris is a criminal who should be prosecuted. Trump has said General Milley, a man the senator says she holds in great admiration, should be tried for treason. She asked Patel directly, is that a prosecution you would initiate? Patel's answer is procedural. The FBI will only open investigations where there's a factual and constitutional basis. Asked about Milley specifically, he falls back further. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and the only thing that matters is whether the law is followed. She presses again, twice, for his personal opinion on whether Milley should be tried for treason. Patel never gives one. He says Harris and Milley won't be investigated unless it meets constitutional standards, a sentence that sounds like reassurance, but commits him to nothing beyond what the Constitution already requires of any FBI director.
I know everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm asking you your opinion. Should General Milley be tried for treason?
Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris, or General Milley or anyone otherwise will not be subjected to an FBI investigation that doesn't meet the rigorous standards of the Constitution.
You've talked about your devotion to the men and women in the FBI. I accept that. But as you know, President Trump used the power of the pardon to let people who are cop beaters out of jail, right? He also let a drug dealer out of jail. You're familiar with or maybe you're not. Ross Ulbricht started the Silk Road, the dark web. He made millions of dollars selling drugs, providing a vehicle by which people could get things that were going to kill them, and people died. He also sought a couple of people to murder on his behalf because he thought his empire was threatened. What is your opinion about Trump pardoning this drug dealer, attempted murderer?
My opinion on presidential pardons is that, one, I was not consulted. And
No.
province of the FBI.
I'm asking you your opinion about Mr. Holbrook. Should the person who created that dark web drug dealer situation, should he be pardoned in your opinion?
The senator introduces a case with specific ugly facts. Ross Ulbricht created the Silk Road, a dark web marketplace that made him millions selling drugs that killed people who bought them. He also solicited murders for hire to protect his operation. Trump pardoned him. She asked Patel for his opinion. Patel starts to answer procedurally. He wasn't consulted on the pardon. Before she cuts him off and asks again, specifically, should this person have been pardoned? In your opinion? Patel says it's not appropriate for him to speak on pardons. In the same breath, unprompted, he adds that he has spoken out against pardons for cop killers and those who commit violence against law enforcement, regardless of which president issues them. That's the contradiction the senator doesn't have to point out explicitly, because it points to itself. He just told her his position on pardons for violent offenders. He simply won't apply it to this one, by this president. She says she agrees with him on cop killer pardons, and notes she still doesn't have an answer on Ulbricht.
It's not appropriate for me to speak on pardons, but I've spoken out against pardons against cop killers and those who do violence to law enforcement, whether it's President Biden or Trump.
I'm with you on that, okay? I'm with the chairman over here. But I'm just trying to find out on Ulbricht. You're going to, again, bottom line here, you're going to have a tough job, and you're going to have a tough boss, because he gets it in his mind he wants to do something, nothing gets in the way. And there's going to come a time when an FBI director or an attorney general has to make a decision about the Constitution and what's being requested, and can that person at that time, when the important values of the Constitution are at stake, say no to a person who is insisting you take an action?
And Senator, that's why I think it's time, for the first time in this country's history, that a public defender be the next director of the FBI, because no one knows more about constitutional due process than PDs.
Well, you're appealing to mutual pride here with the public defender. But you know what? I still understand you didn't answer the question. That's the public defender in me, okay? And I say this to my colleagues. We cannot have a weaponized Justice Department or FBI. And what's weaponized is in the eye of the beholder, like the prosecutions of President Trump. And I get that. We cannot have it. But what I think we all have to acknowledge when we've got a president who's basically saying a political enemy, whether it's Harris, whether it's Liz Cheney, whether it's Adam Schiff, should be prosecuted, that's doing damage to the mutual goal we have of not weaponizing a department.
This is the question underneath every other question in the hearing, and the senator finally asks it directly. When the president is insisting on an action and the Constitution is at stake, can the FBI director or attorney general say no? Patel doesn't answer it. Instead, he pivots to a credential. He believes it's time for the first public defender in the country's history to lead the FBI, because no one understands constitutional due process better than a public defender does. The senator's response cuts straight through it. She appreciates the appeal, but he didn't answer the question. Patel's follow-up, "That's the public defender in me," is not a yes. It is not a no. It is a professional identity, offered in place of a commitment. The senator closes with the principle underneath all four prior exchanges. The country cannot have a weaponized Justice Department or FBI. Patel's response is the one moment in the hearing where he pushes back rather than deflects. Weaponization, he says, is in the eye of the beholder, pointing to the prosecutions of Trump himself. The senator concedes that framing exists and gets it. But she closes on what she says has to be acknowledged, regardless of that framing. A sitting president naming his political enemies, Harris, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and saying they should be prosecuted does damage to the shared goal of a non-weaponized Justice Department, no matter who occupies the office. She yields back without getting a response to that final point.
Vermont's junior senator says Democrats nationwide are ramping up their support for Vice President Kamala Harris as the likely Democratic nominee. But he's not endorsing her yet. Vermont Republicans call this unprecedented.
Well, Lauren, Senator Welch says President Biden's decision to drop out was the right call. He says he thought it would happen and thought it should happen, but was still stunned by the news nonetheless. At an event at the Champlain Marina in Colchester Monday, Senator Peter Welch addressed President Joe Biden's exit from the race. Ultimately, Welch calls Biden's decision, quote, inspiring, saying the president made a tough choice to do what was best for his country.
Coming to the conclusion that the best way to serve America was stepping aside, that's very humble. And he has always put the country first. I think it was the right decision, but I have great admiration for President Biden being able to make that decision. Can't unsee what we saw. So that had to be acknowledged. Democrats acknowledged it. This was a serious concern, not just to the political folks, but to everyday Americans. They had doubts about the health and capacity of the president. That's a hard topic, but it can't be ignored.
It was good to see Democrats sort of finally catch up to where Republicans have been for several months, having genuine concerns about Biden's ability to continue. It is going to be bittersweet for Democrats. It's completely unprecedented to have an incumbent president drop out after he's won every single primary. They're going to have to put forward someone who's never won a presidential primary. And that's going to be a huge burden for whoever that candidate is. The jury's just still out on what the Democrat message is, who's going to lead them, and whether or not that person is going to be able to connect with everyday voters.
But Kash Patel wasn't the only nominee facing questions over the 2020 election and election integrity. Other Trump administration nominees were also pressed on whether they accepted the established outcome. And these next exchanges show just how difficult that question became during their confirmation hearings.
I'm asking you whether it's your opinion that Joe Biden was certified, but that he didn't actually win. That's the President Trump point of view.
And Senator, my answer was that Joe Biden was certified as president and served 4 years in office.
Okay, that is not what I asked you. I asked you who won it, not who was certified. Do you want to give me an answer on that?
Senator, I would refer to my prior answer.
What is the problem with acknowledging who won the election?
I have repeatedly acknowledged that Joe Biden was certified as the president in January 2021.
But what that suggests is it was like by accident, it was by subterfuge, it was somehow illegitimate. Do you believe any of those things to be the case?
I've explained the legitimate process of the Electoral College counting their votes in December of 2020. This is when those votes were cast across the country.
Under your approach, any of us can have whatever opinion we want as to whether the election was legitimate or not. You remember that then President Trump filed, I think, like 80 lawsuits, and virtually all of them except one were thrown out of court. Was there any judicial support for your view that says that there wasn't a conclusive outcome in the 2020 presidential election?
I think the view that I've shared here today is that there was a certification process that resulted in Joe Biden being president.
And this exchange gets to one of the most politically sensitive questions surrounding the 2020 election. The senator was looking for a direct answer. Does the witness believe Joe Biden actually won the election, rather than simply becoming president through the certification process? But instead of giving that straightforward acknowledgement, the witness repeatedly returned to the fact that Biden was formally certified and served as president. That distinction became the entire focus of the confrontation. The senator then pressed further, asking whether there was any legitimate basis for suggesting that the 2020 election outcome was somehow illegitimate. The response pointed back to the Electoral College process and the certification of the results, rather than identifying evidence that overturned Biden's victory. And that is where the exchange becomes significant. The senator pointed to the numerous legal challenges brought after the 2020 election and the lack of broad judicial support for the claim that the election result was invalid. The witness still stopped short of simply saying, in direct terms, that Biden won the 2020 presidential election. So this wasn't just a disagreement over wording. The senator was testing whether the witness would clearly acknowledge the established election outcome without qualifying it through certification or procedural language. And after repeated questioning, that direct answer still wasn't given.
Do you think that the 2020 presidential election was rigged?
Senator, that election's over with. There were no cases proven in court to show that it should be overturned, as happened in for example, the 2018 congressional race, the Ninth Circuit. So what we should be doing is looking forward to try to fix the vulnerabilities that we do know exist in the system.
So what's your answer?
I just gave you an answer. The way Joe Biden is the president, he was certified as the president. There were no cases in court proven to show that there was the kind of fraud that would have overturned the election. That's the way that, as you know, it works. In the Ninth Circuit in North Carolina, that happened.
So the 2020 election was not rigged.
Was what?
Not rigged.
I've given you my answer on this, Senator.
You know what? I don't understand a word you said. Seriously, this is for most folks.
I'll be
yes or
happy
no.
to explain. If you have a case in which you believe that an election was wrongly decided, as happened in the 9th Congressional District.
I don't have much time.
You go to court and you prove your case. That didn't happen in the 2020 election.
So do you believe that a lot of those legal challenges, I guess only one was upheld, that it was proper decision by the court to throw all those challenges out?
I don't have all those cases in front of me, and
Well,
I haven't reviewed all. I haven't reviewed all the cases.
Here's what I'm getting at. There's a subtext here. And the subtext is whether there's going to be ongoing challenges, and there's a certain person running for president right now who's already still talking about that as being rigged. And election integrity that you're talking about includes getting rid of what has been a significant protection in Shelby County with pre-clearance.
And this follow-up exchange makes the issue even more direct. The senator asks a simple question about the 2020 election. Does the witness believe it was rigged? Instead of answering with a simple yes or no, the witness points to the legal record. Biden was certified as president, and the election was not overturned because no court established the kind of fraud that would have changed the outcome. The senator keeps pressing for a direct acknowledgement, arguing that this matters because claims about a rigged 2020 election have continued to influence the political debate. And that's the important distinction here. The witness is not presenting evidence that the 2020 election was overturned or legally determined to be fraudulent. His argument is essentially that if someone believes an election was wrongly decided, that claim has to be established through evidence in the courts. The senator then takes the conversation one step further, connecting election integrity to ongoing political challenges and to broader questions about voting protections. So while the exchange may look like a simple disagreement over the word rigged, the underlying issue is much bigger. Will claims about election legitimacy be backed by evidence and legal proceedings, or continue as political assertions without a court establishing that the outcome itself was invalid? And that's exactly why this exchange is worth adding to the hearing. 5 questions built to test independence, 5 answers built to avoid it. He can say Trump won a race he didn't vote in, but not that Biden won the one that was certified, upheld, and sworn in. He won't rule out prosecuting Harris or investigating Milley for treason, only that the Constitution would technically have to allow it, which is the floor, not a commitment. He says he opposes pardons for violent offenders, then refuses to apply that position to a man who hired hitmen. Asked if he could tell the president no, he answered with his resume instead. And on weaponization, the concern that sits under every other answer in this room, his position was that it depends who's looking. The vote happened anyway. The formula is now the record.